Hello, you beautiful cannabis people, wherever you are watching from, whether you're watching this after the show, whether you're watching this live, whether you're watching this from the interweb. Welcome to another exciting edition of CannaSphere Africa, where we tell you all about the hip and happening things in the cannabis industry in Africa, as well as some international stuff as well. We've got a great lineup. We started a new show last week. We've got lots of people involved. We've got Brett who's doing the news as usual. We go to Canna Lifestyle to Noxy. Then we go to Jeff, who's going to talk about Canna Tech and Internationale. And then we're going to do Canna Doctor with Dr. Carmen, and Cubanzulu is going to give us some insight into international trends with Grow. So there's lots of stuff coming up in today's show. However, the elephant in the room is around what happened a few days ago. So I have to say, for the public record, that I am a fan of Cyril. It's not easy running our beloved land, but I think he does a sterling job most of the time. However, he made quite a few comments about cannabis. So there's been a lot of buzz about that in the general cannabis community and outside of the cannabis community. The problem is, Cyril, is you said the same thing last year. So we'll definitely be unpacking that in this conversation as we go on. Without further ado, Linda, you want to give us a quick update on what the headlines are, and we'll cross over to Brett. Hello, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm good, man. All the way from Cape Town. How are you doing?
All the way from Cape Town. I'm good. Yeah. I'm good. Ready to roll. What's coming up in Brett's headlines today?
Yeah, so we're talking about SONA. Ramaphosa promises to overhaul the outdated cannabis laws. This could be very, very interesting for all of us out there. Also, South Africa plans to grow cannabis and make it an industrial scale. So that's also something that's going to be in the headlines today. And also the president says that the rural communities are going to be empowered and employed through the cannabis industry. And last but not least, we're going to also mention that the cannabis sector is going to be able to employ over 130,000 people. That's also very, very exciting to know.
Well, so lots of focus on that. Thanks for that, Linda. See you a bit later. Without further ado, let's cross to Limpopo province to speak to Brett Hilton-Barber with the news.
Good day and greetings from the CannaSphere studios in the misty foothills of Limpopo. President Cyril Ramaphosa has brought cannabis center stage in South Africa's post-COVID-19 economic development plans. In his State of the Nation address, also known as SONA, the president undertook to overhaul restrictive laws preventing the development of a cannabis economy.
We will review the policy and regulatory framework for a whole number of other processes, but more importantly, which will come as sweet news for our people in the Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal, for industrial hemp and cannabis to realize huge potential for investment and job creation. Now, this natural product, which our people have been farming with and harvesting for a number of purposes, is now going to be industrialized.
The president said 130,000 jobs could be created once a legal framework for cannabis was in place. His commitment has been broadly welcomed by cannabis stakeholders, although with some skepticism. Most observers say it will all come down to implementation. And what is to be implemented? Gareth Prince, chair of the SA Cannabis Development Council, says the president's words are enheartening, but unless the existing cannabis community, including rusters, small-scale farmers, township entrepreneurs, and traditional dealers, are put at the center of a new cannabis policy, it's bound to fail. The NCMP should be built on indigenous knowledge systems, he said. He said current hemp regulations meant that all seed had to be imported and that SA should be using local land races to build an industry instead. Dr. Keith Scott of the National Drug Policy Initiative says the government seems intent on pushing through the Cannabis for Private Purposes bill, which makes no allowance for commercial trade. Siboto Zaba of the African Cannabis Advisory Group says the president's words are cause for optimism, but warns the new cannabis industry has as much chance of failure as it has of success. He says the key success factor is allowing a local legal market to develop.
over time, there will be tweaks to the legislation and regulatory framework to make this industry more accessible. And I think there will be an effort to create a framework for South African individuals and small businesses to cultivate and provide cannabis to the local supply chain.
Zaba says the other big problem government has created for itself is the unrealistic THC percentage limit for hemp. The Agriculture Department has set this at 0.2%, but Zaba says research has shown that this is unrealistic for Southern African conditions and that 1% would be more achievable in a country where natural conditions make THC spike. In other news, the government has quietly banned any product that combines alcohol and cannabis. It's emerged that the Liquor Products Act, the LPA, was amended last year to outlaw any association between alcohol and cannabis. Copyright lawyers Adams and Adams issued a legal note last week saying they were aware that many companies were looking to register trademarks in the cannabis food and beverages sector and were likely to be disappointed by the amendments which Parliament passed in August last year. The only loophole right now is cannabis-infused beer. In terms of the LPA, beer is classified as a foodstuff and therefore falls outside the amendment. However, Adams and Adams believe that there could be a further amendment to the LPA, which is likely to include beer in the ban of cannabis and alcohol ever being legal products. There's been quite a flurry of activity on the cannabis corporate front. On the positive side, cannabis entrepreneur Gabriel Theron aims to list a special purpose vehicle on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange in May this year. He's hoping to raise 500 million rand for psilocybin, his licensed cultivation facility. That's the only local grower I know that's exporting an SA landrace, which is Durban poison. But Tehran wants to use the cash to expand into the psychedelics business and to go for cannabis and non-cannabis assets in the United States. Also looking at the US market is JSE-listed Labat, which in the last few months listed on the Frankfurt Stock Exchange and has now picked up a Florida CBD company, Miami Echo. But not such good news coming out of Nutritional Holdings, which is about to be delisted from the JSE. That's in the wake of a board collapse and mass resignations following problems in getting its cannabis nutritional supplement products off the ground. And finally, despite the move towards legalization, cannabis busts and arrests continue. The latest being a 4 million rand unlicensed grow-op near Lady Grey in the Eastern Cape. Police set up an undercover operation, pretended to be customers, and then made the bust. 2 men were arrested. It's unclear whether they have appeared in court yet. The police seized 600,000 rands worth of cannabis plants and hailed the operation as a great success. Back to you, Trenton.
Oh, hailed operation is a great success. I'm so tired of that. You know, it's like they stand there and do their picture for the press. Look at how strong and tough we are. We arrested all these cannabis growers. It's pretty boring. Few points. It's interesting that Cyril says he's going to review the policy framework. What have we been doing for the last 12 months? I like the fact that he calls it a natural product. I mean, whoever wrote his speech definitely focused in on that, because that is a very overt statement.
Yeah, that was the most impressive. That was the most impressive thing he said to me. It seems like somewhere he got it. The other stuff is all, you know, we've heard it all before. But I think, Trenton, what's going to happen this year, I think, is that Ramaphosa has realized that the National Cannabis Master Plan is stuck under the Department of Agriculture. It's made no headway in getting the Department of Justice on board, and there has to be an override mechanism to get the two talking to each other. And I think that's what he's talking about when he sees he's going to change the overall regulatory framework. And we're hoping that he's going to set up a cannabis desk in the presidency to align the 28 government departments that will be affected by any change in cannabis laws.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the only thing I have to say is hurry up. Don't keep us waiting. 2 more things, alcohol and cannabis. Same in the States. I don't believe they should be mixed. That's my personal opinion. And one thing that I really caught onto there, which Gareth said, was about local landrace strains. When are we going to wake up and realize that we must be proud of our industry, we must be proud of our genetics, and we shouldn't be importing international seed and international genetics and selling it back. We should be building a local industry where we support our own local brands and then exporting those. Why are we exporting international genetics grown here? It makes no sense. So Gareth, hit it on the money there. Brett, thanks so much. We'll catch you a bit later. Right now, we're going to cross over to Johannesburg for Noxy's Canna Lifestyle. Over to you.
I don't guys. I'm feeling a bit more optimistic than Trenton and Brett today. I think something incredible is about to happen. Good afternoon and welcome back to the CannaSphere Lifestyle Desk with me, the Kush Queen, bringing you all things lifestyle, art, and entertainment in the CannaSphere. The entire cannabis industry is abuzz after President Ramaphosa's huge SONA announcement. The amount of job creation that comes with the cannabis industry is going to be massive. And it's time to prepare, of course. So what can you do in the cannabis industry? What kind of jobs can we expect to see? This week, we've rounded up 7 hot cannabis jobs to look out for in 2022, maybe 2023, given the way things go in our land. Everything's a bit slow. Let's start with the top paying jobs. Number 1, master grower. A master grower is a job for someone who is a wizard at making the best marijuana on the market. Number 2, CFO. Every good business needs a top-notch chief financial officer to maximize its profitability and efficiency. At number 3, we have extraction lab manager. The need for extraction will definitely continue to grow, but it's not easy work. It's a quite complicated and hazardous process, hence the super high salary. Now let's look at some entry-level jobs that we can look forward to seeing. A trimmer. Trimmer's job is to cut around the leaves and thick stems in order to get the heart of the precious flower. Number 2, a bud tender. Bud tender position is great for someone who has a bit of retail experience and is looking to get a foot in the door in the cannabis industry. You can learn a great deal about strains, brands, and marijuana culture as a bud tender. At number 3, we have edible chef, because, who doesn't love a good edible? At number 4, we have a cannabis sales rep. Once marketing is created, a brand needs somebody to get the products into the buyer's hands, and that's where sales reps come in. So if you're keen on the cannabis industry and you're currently a sales representative, might as well look at that. I am almost 100% certain that there is a bud tender class and a grow class at Cheeba Cannabis Academy. And if you are looking to get the right certifications, go to www.CheebaAfrica.com. Back to you, guys.
Thanks, Noxy. We'll catch up a little bit later. There certainly is optimism, but we're cautiously optimistic. Irrespective of what happens, irrespective of what happens with government, we all feel this industry is going to go this year because we're going to make it happen with or without government. But we really would be thankful if we didn't have to worry about getting arrested. That would help. We'll come back to you later, Noxy. Thanks so much. Next up, we have Jeff Verlinden, who is going to tell us about some canna tech as well as international nonale. Over to you, Jeff.
Thanks for having me, guys. So if we're going to talk about commercialization and actually getting the structure in place to allow for trade, we need to talk about some quality aspects around the actual goods being on shelves. And this is where we're going to talk maybe on a stability chamber. Now, this is something that's often used when we're trying to determine the shelf life of a product and how long we actually have it for. So what happens is these cabinets are set at predetermined humidity and temperature. And because there's different climatic zones in the world, your cannabis is stored in maybe 2 or 3 of these cabinets. And then based on how it does, we actually know how the terpenes will degrade or not over a period of time and how maybe even the cannabinoids would degrade. And based on that, we can give better label claims to products, not only locally, but also internationally. And that's quite a nice piece of canna tech that hopefully the commercialization going forward will feature. In terms of international news, the biggest things breaking is Mississippi joins for medical cannabis in the south of the US for medical approval. There was a pushback from electrical suppliers to limit access to cultivators if they went ahead, but the state intervened. So Mississippi is on board for number 37 for medical. In terms of Thailand, we did see big moves at the start of the year, as particularly the last week, where you can grow for personal use at home. However, you need to petition the government and get approval. Now, obviously, that brings a lot of concern around putting yourself onto some kind of database for growing. So at least South Africa is fortunate in that regard that we can just privately grow without asking for permission. And then in addition, Spain met yesterday in Congress to review how they're going about their legislative framework. As we know, the clubs in Barcelona have come under increasing pressure from just how to nationalize a structure around cannabis that's more widely integrated. And then lastly, I think the big thing we've been seeing is the success of South African cultivators. I mean, we saw the products from Felbridge finding their way into shelves in Switzerland. So I have an example. I don't know if it can be pulled up that side, but just to show you that South African products are essentially finding their shelves. So great that South Africa is starting to play into the global arena. Even better if we see that locally in terms of access. Back to you, Trenton.
I absolutely agree. It's great to see South African cannabis going global. I don't know if you know, but was it a local genetic or an international genetic? Because again, it's a bit strange if it's international. It's grown locally, but I guess the genetic source could be varied.
So I do know that Felbridge has had partnerships with Pure Gene as well as Perfect Plants, where that would be primarily international and then shipped back out. But the expertise is what's being built. And I mean, you can easily build that expertise and tie in local strains. It's just a question about whether that's commercially going to work for some of these activities. And if government allows.
Yeah, I guess the same with industrialization. We import the raw product, we produce it, and then we export it. You know, there could be worse things we're doing in terms of bolstering our economy. I love that canister, by the way. That's super cool. And I find it bizarre that the Mississippi guys are worried about the electric companies are worried. Why do you think that is? We're going to eat all your power to grow weed, you know? And Spain, yes, I mean, lots of eyes on that at the moment because, you know, the Cannabis Club model is something that a lot of businesses here have based themselves on. I think it's a very good model. So let's keep our fingers crossed that the Spanish manage to charge through that and keep the legitimacy of that model because it's very important. Great.
Agreed.
Thanks, Jeff. We'll see you same time, same place next week. Thanks, Jeff. We now cross to Durban, and we're going to have a little section on from Dr. Carmen, who's an integrative medical doctor, and she's going to give us a bit of insight into canna medicine. Over to you, Dr. Carmen.
Welcome to this week's Medical Cannabis segment. I'm Dr. Carmen, an integrative medical doctor and medical cannabis educator. And in today's segment, we are going to be busting a cannabis myth. Now, you may have heard that long-term use of cannabis can negatively affect your memory and lead to cognitive decline. And this message was widely propagated during the time where governments and drug education institutions were trying to push this idea that marijuana kills brain cells and try to incite fear in people about reefer madness. Now, while we all know that acute intoxication with cannabis can reduce your memory and lead to some cognitive impairment, studies have shown that these effects are short-lived. Now, we can take a look at the effects of cannabis in the brain by examining a neurodegenerative disease, one we probably all are familiar with, known as Alzheimer's disease. Now, Alzheimer's disease is a particularly devastating neurodegenerative disease that actually involves the buildup of plaques, which are basically these protein deposits that start to build up inside the brain. Also leads to inflammation of the brain and death of nerve cells, also known as neurons. Now, cannabis has actually been studied in Alzheimer's disease, and in fact, CBD, because of its powerful antioxidant properties, is actually anti-inflammatory and helps to protect the brain in Alzheimer's disease. THC is also neuroprotective, in other words, protects the brain from brain damage, but THC has also been shown to reduce plaque formation. Now, this is fascinating and quite interesting because it seems that, in fact, this myth about cannabis negatively affecting your brain is quite the opposite. In fact, THC, CBD, and many other terpenes, for example, linalool, limonene, as well as alpha-pinene, have all been shown to have very positive effects in mitigating the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, such as anxiety, aggression, psychosis, and even loss of appetite and pain in people who suffer from this condition. And so while most drugs of abuse actually lead to reduced production of new brain cells, also known as neurogenesis, cannabis has actually shown that it helps to improve the production of new brain cells and is a very important potential therapy that we can use in this neurodegenerative condition. So, myth officially busted.
Thanks, Dr. Carmen. I think we live in a fascinating time. It's a crazy time. But to have taken these plants, whether it's psilocybin, whether it's, cannabis, and we're starting to realize the positive benefits it has to our health. And we're discovering new stuff all the time. I think it's a fantastic time to be alive, and I'm super excited to be part of this whole matrix. Right, talking about growing, we have Cubanzulu, who's going to give us a bit of insight into some new technology maybe, or some new styles, or anything to do with the growing space. Cuban, over to you.
Hello, cannabis community. This is Wanda, aka the Cuban, coming to you live from CannaSphere's Grow team. So basically, what I'd like to highlight some really, really exciting stuff for cultivators. 31st of January, we had an announcement from a California-based genetics company, and basically they've created seedless cannabis. This is through a technology they're calling pistol guard, and what that basically does is they've been able to breed seeds or clones that are intrinsically seedless. It's basically a triploid plant, and whether you have the plant right next to a male or not, whatever happens, it is pollen proof. And why is this exciting? Because basically it allows commercial growers to be able to kind of grow on a much larger scale with mitigating one of the risk factors, being pollen that can be at a neighboring farm or neighboring city. It flies in the wind and it goes as far as it pleases. So basically the exciting development is no matter what pollen is next to your plant, it will not pollinate it. And alongside that, the pistol guard technology, creating this triploid plant, basically allows you to be able to have a plant that is increased in yield, and increased leaf size, increased stem, basically a plant on steroids that is impossible to be pollinated by a male plant.
Wow, that's amazing, Cuban. There's so much technology happening. So thanks for bringing that to us. We'll see you same time, same place next week. Cool. So that brings us to the end of the show. Brett, Noxy, Linda. I think the topic of the day really today is sonar. And Linda, I'm interested to know your opinion. What do you think about the sonar situation? Think it's all hype or real?
Well, I mean, I'm really excited to hear what the foreign direct investors will do now, seeing that our president has announced this, even though it is the second time. So, I mean, my phone was blowing up the day that happened, because I don't really watch TV, just disclaimer. And I was just getting all these messages from people like, look, what's happening? Your industry is starting to start up again. So there is some excitement from non-cannabis people, but it just remains to be seen what's that going to do financially for us in this sector.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And Brett, I think, you follow all this kind of hard news quite closely. What's your, just in a nutshell, what's your gut?
Okay, my gut feel is there is a fundamental realignment underway, not just in overhauling the laws governing cannabis in South Africa, but very interestingly, the president mentioned Lesotho 3 times during his speech, how they'd become a world leader and how South Africa could learn from them. And I think we're seeing the beginning of a regional alliance between Southern African countries who are going to work together much more to get our laws into alignment and all that, so we can start exporting as a Southern African sort of regional bloc. So for me, in the longer term, that's probably the most exciting thing from a geopolitical point of view. But in the short term, I think we have a president who's open to ideas, and if he's got the right advisors around them and gets the National Cannabis Master Plan out of agriculture's hands and puts it into the presidency, then we'll see some action. But if he doesn't do that, we won't.
Yeah, well, we'll see some action from some other segments of the population. We will go and toy if we don't get what we want, Mr. Ramaphosa. I know, Noxy, you're super optimistic, which is always good, always upbeat. Thanks for being here and sharing your positive vibes. Guys, we run out of time, 25 minutes on the dot, as we like to run on time. You've been watching CannaSphere, bringing you the latest updates on things happening in the African cannabis industry and around the world. Until next week, peace and love. We'll see you then. Ciao.
Bye.